we go. Okay, awesome. Get this on my face. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now I can't walk as much, huh? I'm a mover. That's weird. Okay, who's traveled? We live in Western Montana, right? Who's traveled to Eastern Montana? Who's been over in Eastern Montana? Okay, tell me I'm gonna ask each one of you that raised your hand. How is Eastern Montana different from Western Montana? What's something you noticed that was different? This is my funky map of Montana, okay? Not true to size or scale. What was something you noticed that was different when you went to Eastern Montana? What looked different to you? Okay, what about you, Olivia?
Well, we were traveling through it, so it looked more open, like more fields.
Yeah, more open. Okay. Okay. Because you've traveled to Eastern Montana. Did you raise your hand? Okay, sorry, Brody. Thought you did. Sorry about that.
Does Haver count as Eastern Montana?
Haver does. Yep. Yep.
I would say that it was more. I would say it sort of seemed more open-minded.
Open-minded? Okay, the people were more open-minded? Interesting. Okay.
It was just all flat.
Flat. That's the word I was looking for. Okay.
There were no mountains there.
No mountains. Exactly. There's no mountains over there.
And it was also a lot more humid, too.
It is more humid. I will explain why it's more humid. Okay? So I want you guys to stand up and just peek out this window, right? Or this window. Right? You look out this way, or you look out this way, to the north or the south. What do you guys see immediately? Mountains, right? We are surrounded by mountains. So there is this separation. We are starting with the geography. These are mountains. Hey guys, this is a universal symbol on a rough map for mountains. What else was, if you have mountains, what do you also typically have? Trees, right? What is mostly over in Eastern Montana? Pretty.
Just really plains and flat.
Plains, right, plains. So with plains, you either have grasses or agriculture. What is agriculture? It's a big $25 word for
Farmland.
Farmland and ranching. That's agriculture, right? Why is this important? Why is the geography important? The geological part of Montana important to Montana?
Because like the mountains, like for hiking and like finding.
You can hike in them. Okay, hiking, fossils. Okay. So we are going way, way, way back in time. Okay, depending on your view of what happened with the Earth. Some people believe in evolution and this big upsurgence of unrest in the Earth, right? And some people are more prone to look at Noah and the flood. Whichever view we're going to talk about how that created Montana, okay? Montana is 1/3 mountains and 2/3 plains. All right, so quite a while ago, whichever theory and whatever you and your family believe, right? There are things called plate tectonics. That's a fact, that's not a theory, okay? Who knows what plate tectonics are? Okay, so plate tectonics, the earth moves on big masses of rock. Some of them one will go under and one will go up. Sometimes there's two that will collide and they both push up, and sometimes there's two that will both go down, okay? Anytime where they meet, that's called a fault line. Anytime you're by a fault line, things happen. What's the number one thing that happens when we're on a fault line?
Earthquakes.
Earthquakes, right? So when you see mountains, like what we see around here, we are on a fault line, right? The type of fault line that we are on is this, where both of them press up, okay? That's the type, that's what's making our mountains. Sometimes you can be around mountains like in the eastern part of the United States where the Appalachian Mountains are, where one goes down and one goes up. That's why their mountains are softer, they're not as rugged, okay? If you go down to like Southern California, where there's a lot of earthquakes, guess what? Plates down there, they both are going down. It's right off the ocean. Kind of interesting, huh? So with that said, that's what formed our mountains, right? So we had, not only did we have these two plates that are pushing up, pushing rock to make these mountains, right? And this really incredible, catastrophic, violent thing that happened at least probably 5,000 years ago, if not longer, right? What also happened is after that catastrophic event, whether it was the flood or something else, okay? After that catastrophic event, our whole climate changed, okay? What do you think happened when our climate changed? Got cold, exactly. What happens when things get crazy cold? Ice, yes, we went into an ice age, right? Again, these are facts, no matter what theory you have, whether you have a biblical theory of creationism, or whether you have the theory of evolution. These things happen. Guess what happened with Western Montana? What do you think covered Western Montana? Ice, a huge mass of ice called a glacier. Who's ever been to Glacier National Park? That's actually where I grew up, right? They still have some small glaciers there. You can see a glacier as it's so imperceptible, but it's carving rock. That ice is so hard. Who's ever cut their hand on ice? I have. You know, at least, you know, you're ice skating or you're sledding and you put your hand down, your glove comes off and it cuts your skin, right? Very least. I've actually cut myself on ice before. So a glacier is like hundreds and hundreds of feet thick of ice, and it can carve rock. Pretty amazing, right? So for at least hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, Western Montana, and this is also like parts of Idaho, northern Idaho, right, over into Washington, down anywhere you see the Rocky Mountains, it was covered with a glacier. Pretty amazing, right? So then things start to warm up, we're not as cold, and the glaciers start to melt. Well, what is sand? What is sand? What?
Tiny.
It's just ground up rock, right? Well, what do you think happened as the glaciers melted?
It creates sand and gravel.
Created sand and gravel, and what else? Say that really a little bit louder. Pull your mask down. I can't hear you, Shan. I'm so sorry.
Erosion.
Erosion. Yes. Thank you, Shan. I'm so sorry. Erosion. And erosion has what we talked about: gravel, sand, water. So guess what this happened? What do you think was covering all of eastern Montana? It's actually a big, massive inland sea. Who's ever traveled out of Montana to the east to say North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, any of the Midwestern states? Do you know that all of that was an inland sea? All of it. So when we talk about gravel and sand, right? It's not just like gravel that you see on a playground, right? It actually is called silt, right? Silt. And silt is some of the most nutritious dirt you can find, right? And so do you begin to understand why the plains have so much grass, and nowadays why the plains, eastern Montana, is mostly agriculture, right? It has the perfect conditions for farming and ranching. It's just great, right? Recently, there is a little teeny town in eastern Montana called Ekalaka, right? It's about right here. This was the map, be right about here. This little teeny town, and I went to a wedding there. And the water table is so high, right? It's about 4,000 feet in elevation, but you can just walk out into a field and all of a sudden you are in a pool of water. The water table is really high. Isn't that interesting? So it's got these great conditions for ranching, because over here where we're at, when you have a ranch, you usually have to dig and then pump water into that pond so your cattle can drink, right? You have to create a pond for them. Over in eastern Montana, they just happen. It's pretty great. So that is why 2/3 of eastern Montana is so much agriculture, right? So much. Now, over here in western Montana, you talk about hiking and fossils, right? Well, a lot of us, including myself, I prefer mountains, just how they look, right? And I'd like to do the things that mountains offer, right? Hiking, mountain biking. We have higher mountain lakes. I like to go swimming. I like to go paddle boarding. I like to fly fish, right? I'd like to do those things. That creates what is called tourism, or the service industry. So over here in western Montana, this is why we typically have tourism and the services industry. What else do you think the mountains and trees provide? Rivers, yep. Protection. Who's ever been up to like by Libby or Eureka, Montana? You guys ever heard of those places? They're way up here. Okay, so Libby and Eureka are way up here. Who's ever been to Butte? Okay, what is Butte famous for? I mean, they're still operating this industry.
Oh,
Mining, right? Why? Mountains are rock. What is in rock? Minerals, right? Copper, gold, silver, palladium, I can't even say the word. Platinum, right? Palladium, there we go. I was trying to combine those two. These are really, really, really important minerals. Did you know that, like, for palladium, which is really important to computers, there are only 5 places in the world that you can mine that. One of them is in Montana. That's pretty intense, right? So, mining. What do trees provide for an industry? Paper. Where does paper come from? It comes from trees. What is that podium made out of? Or the piano? Wood, right? So forestry. Forestry is another huge industry for Montana. So with this being west and with this being east, do you begin to see how geology shaped our state? Yeah, because as we study more and more recent, even our Native American tribes, right? How our Native American tribes, which is what we're going into next, lived very differently in eastern Montana than our Native American tribes that lived over here in western Montana, right? Can you guys tell me, how do you think some of our natives, or we also call them indigenous people? Because who was here first in Montana? I'm fully European. My ancestors are fully European, okay? I'm Irish, a little bit of English, and a tiny bit of Norwegian, right? I don't have any Native in me. I don't have any African American in me, okay? My nieces, however, my brother married a fully Native American woman, right? So who actually was in Montana first? Was it our indigenous people, our native people, or was it people like my ancestors from Europe? Who came first? Who was living here first? Shan. The natives were, exactly. And that's why I use the curriculum I do. Because if you were to go to a school like I went to in middle school, we never talked about the natives. That's not very fair to history, is it? Did you know that Montana has the most reservations on it than any other state? That's pretty amazing. So they're very critical to our history and how we operate today. It's really important to understand them and listen to their needs and their wisdom as well. So as we look at Western Montana and Eastern Montana, and we look at the history of our indigenous people, right? In fact, is there anybody here who has Native American in them that you know of? A little bit? Awesome, cool. Anyone else? A little bit in you? That's great.
Well, my uncle, but not one really good.
Yeah, but you know what? That's great. That's fantastic. Great. In fact, my nieces and my nephew are gonna Zoom in a couple weeks, so you guys can learn more about history from their perspective, because it's really important to hear how they see history as well, right? How do you think, what were something that you think were differences in how the Eastern natives lived versus the Western natives live? What are some ideas? Olivia.
More of the Eastern people had more like farming and crops to do, kind of.
So here's just a little thing, because I minored in Native American studies and Grecian studies in school, which is a weird combination. But the only people who actually were into intensive agriculture, natives, right, were people along the coastlines, okay? But that's a really good guess, so I'm proud of you for being brave and guessing. Anybody else have a guess? They both hunted. It's a different type of hunting. So let's roll with that, okay? What type of hunting do you think, how do you think people hunted differently? Shan, you started to.
Well, I was going to say that they probably traveled different.
They did travel different, so it has to do with hunting. How, okay, so tell me how you think they traveled.
Like paths that the Nazis created.
Yes, exactly. So they traveled in the West. They traveled on wildlife paths, right? Who's ever been hiking and seen a deer trail? Right? We all have, right? They would just use the trails because why create a new one, right? The instincts of deer or elk, right, are pretty good. So they're going to find the path of least resistance, right? So they would share those trails with them. How do you think they traveled over in the East?
Maybe by horse once they found them.
They did eventually travel by horse. Yes. Once they got horses, they traveled on horses. How do you think they traveled before horses?
Dogs.
They did. They used dogs. You read People of the Dog Days, right?
Oh, yeah.
So they would walk and they'd have their dogs carry their goods, right? Okay, so how did they hunt differently?
Well, I'm pretty sure, I can't remember, I remember this, but I don't remember if it's in the west or the east, but it was something about they would trap a bison and they would have the herd go over a cliff. And that's how they would hunt. Yeah. I can't remember if that was in the east or the west.
It's in the east. A little bit over here in the west, because what do we have just down the road on your way to Three Forks? Who's been there?
I actually went there 2 days ago.
Did you? Yeah. You can actually go to a place where they have found archaeologically the evidence that they would push big herds of bison over the jump. It's called Buffalo Jump State Park. Isn't that cool? It's actually a really fun place to go. It's a sweet little hike, and you can see sometimes you can find arrowheads, and sometimes you can find, you know, some bones and things like that. Be careful. There's lots of rattlesnakes, so just be aware. So if this was their primary way of hunting, right, and they mostly gathered more than actual farming, they would gather seed heads, or they would gather fruit. They do grubbing. Do you guys know what grubbing is? Grubbing is taking a stick. They'd have a digging stick, and then they are like, oh, there's a wild onion, or oh, there's a wild potato, and then they just take a stick as they were walking, and they pick it up real quick and put it in a basket. We call it foraging now, too. That's another word for it. So how do you think they hunted in the West? Trapping. Yes, they did. They did a lot of trapping, not in the trapping of the sense, you know, they didn't have steel traps, but they would do what are called snares. Has anybody ever used a snare? I have too. Yeah. How do you walk us through making a snare?
I don't really know. I was like really little when
Oh, okay. So you don't really remember? You want to walk us through? What do you do?
Trying to think. Well, I mean, it depends on the type, but it's sort of like a lasso, but hung
It
up on a
is.
tree.
Yeah, it's like a lasso. You can either put it on the ground. So some people use wire nowadays, but back then they would have used like braided horsehide or sinew, and they would have either put it on the ground and then covered it with leaves, so that then when they stepped in it, right, it would work on a trigger. Have you guys ever seen an old-fashioned mousetrap? Where as soon as you touch it, it snaps? It's a trigger mechanism like that. And as soon as they step in that circle, it would tighten around one of the legs of the animals, right? And then it goes bing, and it lifts them up off the ground so that it keeps them from, say, a fox or a wolf or a coyote or a bear, right? So that's how they would trap, is they would use snares. What do you think is another way that they hunted? Who hunts now? Who's a hunter? I am not a hunter, but my husband is.
they would just hunt.
They would just hunt. They would just hike, right? Or if you're lucky enough to have horses, they would be, because they at times had horses too, right? Like the Nez Perce definitely had horses, and they definitely had horses. So they would just hike or hunt on horses. They would just hunt, right? The biggest difference about their hunting versus a bison is, if you're going out to hunt, versus having a whole bison herd, who's going to get more meat all at once? The eastern or the western? Eastern, definitely. So basically over in the West, they were hunting all the time. They were never not hunting. Where over in the East, that would be like 2 or 3 really big hunts all at once, weeks and weeks of preserving the meat and the hide and the intestines, because nothing went to waste, right? Ever. We're going to have a gentleman who still does these crafts. He's going to come in. He's going to show you all the things he's made from all different parts of the buffalo and the elk and the beaver he's gotten. It's so cool, right? He's my neighbor. He's a great guy.
One year this guy came in and showed us like how he made bone, like things out of bones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with all of that said, like these guys it'd be like one massive hunt and then weeks and weeks and weeks of preserving everything to live off of, right? Or over here, they were always hunting. So they might get, let's say, 6 of the men in the tribe went out hunting. They got 2 elk. That's a big deal, right? Because they're hunting on foot with what? What type of equipment are they using? Spears, right? Back then, spears. So if we're hunting with spears, right? We don't have a nice compound bow. You guys know what a compound bow? Those are the fancy bows that you see in magazines. Pretty stinking accurate. I mean, you still have to be pretty stealthy. My husband's an archer, and but the advantage over a spear, how close would you have to get to an elk to spear him? Like this close, right? So you're hiding. So if, let's say 6 men went and got 2 elk, right? That's a great hunt, right? That's a really great hunt. How much do you think your family eats in a year when it comes to meat? So I have 2 adult children. I have a 21-year-old girl and a 23-year-old girl. But when my kids were at home and they were your age, my family, 4 of us, would eat 1 elk a year. So family of 4 ate 1 elk in a year. Your tribes were typically anywhere from 24 to 50 people. You go out on 1 hunt, and a good hunt is 2 elk. And it's only going to feed 8 people for a year. That's pretty intense, right? When you start thinking of that. So do you see why the Western natives were always hunting, right?
Can I say how much my family eats?
Sure, absolutely.
An elk and 2 deer.
An elk a year?
An elk and 2 deer.
Elk and 2 deer, so a little bit more than my family. Yeah. So my husband grew up in a family of all boys. Guess how much they would eat a year? They would eat 2 elk and 4 deer, or 12 deer. Like it depended on what they got. Yeah, because they just ate a lot, right? Just is what it is. All right. So as we study this, tell me, I'm going to ask you guys some questions, okay? Do you think our land, our Montana land, our state, the land is still changing right now? Okay. In what ways?
Well,
Oh, actually, as soon as you answer this, we're going to do something fun. Okay.
okay. Well, in the first chapter of the one we read, it said that Yellowstone grew like 28 inches, like from like the flat into like, I don't know how to describe it, like just grew. So that's changing, and then like the tectonic plates are like still moving slightly every year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, what happened this spring? If you lived in Manhattan, you especially experienced this, but we experienced it all the way out in Three Forks. I live out by Wheat, Montana. What's that? There was an earthquake. It wasn't huge, but there was an earthquake because the epicenter is right around Manhattan. Who lives in Manhattan or has friends or family that live in Manhattan? You're close? Yeah, right? Pretty amazing, right? Still changing. It was only like around 4 point on the Richter scale, but that's enough to make our lights over our table and over our island made them wave. I had one picture fall off my mantle, you know, and I was out in Three Forks. Pretty crazy, right?
Can I tell the story of that earthquake?
Actually, tell the story, and then when I'm done with this, I'm gonna have you do some movement, because I think to just sit in class gets a little bit overwhelming. So we're gonna just do some stuff real quick, okay?
So it was my mom's first earthquake.
Mm-hmm.
So, and she goes, what was that? My dad goes, either a semi-truck just hit the house or it was an earthquake.
Thank goodness it wasn't a semi truck. Okay, stand up. All right. And we're just gonna do some stretching real quick. That's all. Nothing big, nothing weird. So I just want you to just really stretch overhead. Okay, and then just go back and forth a little bit. Oops, watch your neighbor. Okay, and then just stretch behind you. Okay, just give yourself a big hug. And then just bend over, stretch out your back, because when you sit, right, just kind of dangle a little bit, stretch out your back. Okay, all right. And then 5 jump jacks. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's stop looking back. Okay, and then just get the wiggles out however you need to. Awesome, great. Okay, let's get back. We're going to talk about Yellowstone. What is Yellowstone? Because that's our biggest thing that keeps changing. What is Yellowstone? It is a super volcano. Well, how is a super volcano different from a volcano? Go ahead. You.
Super volcano is huge.
Huge. It's super, right? Has to be, the crater has to be over a mile long. That's the definition of a super volcano. Okay. So Yellowstone, when you go into Yellowstone Park, have you guys ever recognized that you're going down into the park? Yeah. Have you ever noticed the rim? Yeah. It's a super volcano. So there's only 12 this is a bad drawing, okay? So there's only 12 this is all the trees around it. There's only 12 super volcanoes in the world, and we are right by one, okay? Here is Yellowstone Lake, right? The lowest point in our super volcano. And like your reading told you, it's been growing 20 inches over the past few decades. Okay, that may not sound like a lot, but guess how it's growing? Any guesses?
This is just like, maybe the water, I don't know. It's like the water, I don't know. It's the rain makes the.
Okay, that's a good guess. Yeah, it's good to guess. I appreciate guesses a lot. Go ahead, Brody.
Are the tectonic plates underneath the volcano rising?
Another really good guess. Shan?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like expanding.
Okay, these are all good guesses. This is how it's changing. This is how it's rising. If we were to cut the lake in half and look at a cross section, do you guys know what a cross section is? Okay, so if we're looking at the lake as a cross section, this is what the lake used to look like, the bottom of the lake, right? That would be the bottom of the lake. This is right, and we'll put a fish right here. Okay. Guess what it's looking like now? What do you think this is? What do you think, guys?
Isn't it the magma coming up?
It's magma. What is magma?
Lava that's under the ground.
Right, it's magma and lava. Lava. What is lava?
It's basically just magma, but when it reaches the surface, it turns into lava.
Okay, what are these?
Melted rock.
Melted rock. Does that not kind of, I don't know, I kind of trip out on the idea. Melted rock? Like the core of our earth is so hot that it takes rock, right? Is rock solid, right? Is it easy to break rock? Most rock, it's really difficult. It's so hot, it's turned it into a liquid, right? It's melted rock. So melted rock is pushing this up. So if just, I can't remember the exact amount, but we'll say 20 to 30 years ago, the bottom of Yellowstone was relatively flat. I need to let these kids see. I can't see it. There we go. Was relatively flat, right? And now there's a big bubble in it. Do you know that this year, in 1 year, good old 2020, right? It actually, just this year, fastest rise ever of 2¼ inches. That's pretty intense, right? What else has been happening in Yellowstone? What else do we see in Yellowstone besides Yellowstone Lake and the caldera as you go in? Geysers. What's been happening to the geysers?
Haven't been have one coming out.
Exactly. Right? I'm just going to do a few geysers, right? So we have our geysers. There aren't as many geysers. There have been geysers. I remember the first time I went to Yellowstone, I was 23, even though I'm from Montana and I was born and raised in Glacier. For some reason, I never went to Yellowstone. I was 23. When I went to Mammoth, right?
Oh, yeah.
There was hot water everywhere, right? I just went this summer and I'm like, there's nothing dripping over those falls, right? There's the whole Beehive geyser. It doesn't have any water coming out of it anymore, right? That's from the shift in the tectonics, right? That's the shift in the volcano. So the volcano, as this is building pressure up in one spot, right? It's closing other spots down. Who's ever done a science experiment about pressure? What happens, like if, who's ever made macaroni and cheese? Okay, so the water starts boiling, right? You pop your noodles in, maybe give it a stir. What happens if you put a lid on there without a steam crack?
The pressure just starts to build and the lid eventually just pops right off.
Boom. That's what's happening in Yellowstone. As there's shifts going on in the tectonics, and as there's shifts going on in the volcano, and it's shutting some of those geysers down, which were like pockets of release for steam and pressure and air. It's all building up in one big part, right? Isn't that crazy? So Montana's land is still changing. Pretty cool, huh? Yeah. So things are, it seems like everything's always super normal, but no, there's changes.
Does that mean like Yellowstone's gonna erupt soon?
Nobody knows when Yellowstone's gonna erupt, right? They know it was over 1,000 years ago, right? That's the thing about nature, right? That's the thing about weather, about all of this. Only God knows when things are gonna blow up, right? Or there's gonna be a tornado, or there's gonna be a hurricane. Like we can see them forming, but we can't actually say, oh, Yellowstone's gonna blow tomorrow. It could still be 500 years from now before it blows up. All we know is that there are indicators that it's getting closer to blowing up again. But what is it gonna take? Nobody knows. And that's the same with the other super volcanoes in the world. That's the same with, there's a lot of volcanoes over in Oregon and Washington, right? In 1980, when I was 10 years old, yes, I'm 50. You guys can laugh, it's okay. Don't get offended. Mount St. Helens blew, right?
Yeah.
And do you know that there's actually no predictors until a week before that it blew? Yeah, so things happen, right? Things happen. We're actually in a good place. We'll just go meet Jesus really quick. If it
It'll
blows.
just explode.
Yeah, and I'll just go and we won't even know anything.
Yeah.
I'd rather be here than somewhere else. It'll be not as much fun.
Mhm.
Yes.
If the Yellowstone did explode, wouldn't it like go across America, like all this?
It'll just like how we were talking with like the Ice Age, right? And how the Ice Age was a result of a catastrophic event that happened worldwide, right? How it completely changed the weather systems of the entire world. If Yellowstone blew, it would completely change the weather systems of the entire world, right? Because you have so much ash going, it's going to thicken our cloud cover, thicken our atmosphere, and we will go into another ice age. A smaller one, but it would still happen.
What if all the super volcanoes in the world blew at the same time?
I don't think there'd be much of the world left. Just saying. That'd be pretty intense, right? There is actually on PBS a movie that they made on that. So yes. Okay. My next question. If you lived in the Ice Age, how do you think your life would look different? Brody?
We would probably have to chop wood every single day.
Okay, if you lived in the Ice Age, would you have had an axe? What would your axe look like?
It would be wood.
The handle might be wood.
The blade could be rock or ice.
The blade probably wouldn't be ice because it would get warm when you started using it. What type of rock do you think it would have been? It's called obsidian. So archaeology has discovered axes. Most of them were hand axes, right? So can you imagine instead of putting the axe on a handle, you had to chop wood, the big piece of obsidian, and go boom, boom, boom. So lots of times their fires were even just collection of branches. You guys ever gone camping and when your dad or mom, maybe you went with like your brothers or older brothers or sisters, and they said, go get some wood, and you had to like collect sticks. A lot of your fires probably would have been more like that. How would you have dressed if you were in the Ice Age?
Extreme winter.
Extreme winter. If you were closer to the glacier, definitely extreme winter. What does that look like? Does that look like wearing your Carhartt overalls or your North Face down coat? What do you think that would have looked like, Shen?
Well, probably like a ton of animals.
Tons of animal skins. You want to know something I learned from my neighbor who's gonna come and talk to us? You know how when we watch a movie and we see, representations of ancient peoples wearing animal skins, they always have the fur side out. Do you know that that's inaccurate? That would actually keep you colder, right? To have the skin side close to your skin. So the skin side was out and the fur side was next to your skin because it traps more air to keep you warm. Pretty cool, huh? Something I literally just learned this summer from him because he's making a buffalo robe. And I'm like, is that inside out? And he's like, no, this is how you're supposed to wear it. Kind of cool, huh? Yeah. What do you think you'd be eating? Do you think you'd be eating pizza rolls and bagel bites, macaroni and cheese? No? What do you think you'd be eating?
Did they eat raw meat?
So archaeological evidence from people who say have been like frozen or in mud, trapped in mud instantly, where their intestines have been well preserved, it shows that most often the time they didn't eat raw meat, that they would cook their meat more often than not. Okay. But I've had steak tartare before, which is a delicacy and it's raw meat, and I really like it. I eat sushi. Who eats sushi here?
Ugh.
That's a raw meat. So it's not completely, I'm sure at times they did, but most of the time it would either be dried like jerky or made into what is called pemmican, which is berries and nuts and meat all together, then dried or cooked over a fire. Yeah, good question.
All I know is that there wouldn't be vegetarians or vegans.
Some cultures actually were much more vegetarian and vegan. If they were close to the equator,
Well, yeah, closer to the glaciers. Then,
right, they were, but if you were closer to the glaciers, definitely you're much more of a meat eater, right? Okay, let's do one more question. Because I just want you to get thinking about that. We gotta talk about homework. Okay, so your homework are 2 questions. The biggest question is, do you think here in Montana we have places where you can see signs of ancient peoples? We do. Montana has a ton of different places. So one of your homework questions, we already discussed one of your homework questions that are in there, and you'll see it. But one of your homework questions is to go online, right? And I prefer if you guys actually use Google, but if you don't, that's okay. But if you were to type in places in Montana where I can see ancient peoples, right? Something like that, or you literally type in this question, I'm going to ask you to send me 3 places that you could go to in Montana that shows signs of ancient peoples. And what I want to see is I want to see a picture of it. Okay, so your homework will have a picture of, let's say it's buffalo jump. Okay, all right. Now you can't use that because I just gave it to you, so you can't use buffalo jump state park. Okay, but you would show, put a picture, copy and paste the picture of buffalo jump, and then you would tell me where it is. Where is it? It's by Logan, Montana. It's by Three Forks, Montana, right? What would you find there? Oh, you would find arrowheads, you would find bison bones, things like that, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, all your homework is turned in on Jupiter Ed. And have you guys, who has not used Jupiter Ed to turn in homework? Anyone? You're still working on it? Okay, if you run into trouble, let me know, okay? So you're gonna be like, the number 1, Buffalo Jump State Park, this is where it's at. It's also gonna tell you, in all these places in your research, it's gonna tell you the estimated age of it, right? So Buffalo Jump State Park, I believe it's estimated to be about 1,200 years old. So I want to see how old it's estimated as well.
Will this all these questions on?
Yes, all these directions. I'm just trying to go through it for you so that we can, in case we have a question here in class. Mm-hmm.
So my only source of internet is a Chromebook, and you can't copy and paste it.
You can screenshot on a Chromebook. Yes, you can. Yep. Yes, so you can screenshot on a Chromebook. Yep. Okay. I do know that for sure. So just screenshot it and then take it and send it to me that way. Any other questions, you guys? Mm-hmm. Yes, Google Docs work great. Yep. I love Google Docs. So if you want to take your information, put it on a Google Doc rather than a PDF or a Word.
What about a Juno doc?
Or Juno Doc? Yep, I accept all of those. Yep, you betcha. Okay, bye. We'll see you Wednesday. Okay? Goodbye. Okay, I hope you guys understand that. If you don't, please reach out and let me know if you have any questions. Before I started recording, all we did is we went over the syllabus. And so on the syllabus, I'll just do a real quick rehash next week as well. So your homework is due next Tuesday by 4 o'clock. So those 2 questions, and then also your reading is all due by Tuesday, 4 o'clock. All right, I hope you guys both feel better. All right, so have a really blessed week and take care of yourselves. Thank you. Okay, she said, going through.
Little legs are so good.
I can stick with a break though. Exactly, you're. I answered both. It's all good. Let's put in ASAP.
You don't need sound, because I couldn't get the sound to work.
Nope,
Okay.
I do not. Wonder what's going on.
I don't know either. Is there just something not, like, I don't know if it's my computer. I don't know. But
I don't know.
I've just been using my little Bluetooth speaker because I don't really yeah.
Gotta get going. I can be her, I want to be her next. See my rough design. I'm waiting for Colleen to send me the Emerge logo.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're excited for the shirt?
Yeah, I'm kind of bummed they don't offer teal.
Everybody, I know.
I didn't, but Savannah's like, can I do this? I'm like, okay, sure. But it brought back fun memories. So this is the closest to teal. Oh, and then I really like this one. Don't tell me. Anyways, and I couldn't decide on what other color. So I have a charcoal, a brown. What's that?
Charcoal's cute, I think.
Oh, the charcoal is like great, but the charcoal actually looks fantastic. That's the brown. Here's the charcoal.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the white, but we have one other choice if we want on there. Didn't know if we wanted any of these, but do you like it?
I like it. I can't decide if I like it off to the center or if like.
I couldn't either. I couldn't either.
No, but
I
I'm not
kind
the
of.
best person to ask for like a design.
So this is what it looks like.
Yeah, because I almost like that a little bit better than off to the side, but that's just me. You should ask Sarah Hay what she wants.
So,
She's got more of a design eye than me.
anyways, the only reason I was thinking, and this is why I need the
Merge logo.
the merge logo, is because it looks funky if it's off to the side and then we put the merge logo right here.
Oh,
it looks a little more like a
Like a logo.
like a
Oh, I
logo, like
see.
a patch.
Right.
Whereas if we centered it and then we put it, it's the logo's literally gonna be on our boobs.
True.
And I
Unless
get
you put the-
self-conscious
unless you put the
because,
logo on the back.
right,
I
which
know.
we could do. Or I could put Grit and Grace on the back and then do the logo. And
Right.
that was the other option, is
Oh,
put the
that's
logo up here and then put Grit and Grace on the back and make it shoulder to shoulder, which would
Right.
kind of be cool too.
I know, I like that idea.
Anyways,
Yeah, gosh, I know, I'm not the best at that, but yeah.
yeah, but sometimes I like to ask people who don't have the design eye because
Yeah.
what would you wear, right?
Yeah, I think I would be more likely to wear like an Emerge shirt with
With
Grit and Grace on the back, or like the design logo and then like Grit and Grace underneath it. Your belly, I don't know. Could
We either have to go really big, because again, it's just because of how I'm built, I'm super duper self-conscious
Yeah,
of drawing attention to that area of my,
right.
that's why, like, I'm okay with this, because it's my whole torso, right? It's not just, so I'll mess with that too.
Getting windy outside yet? I decided if I'm gonna teach music outside today or not. It was supposed to get like super windy this afternoon. Oh no, it's like,
It doesn't look like it, it looks like some snow. Look at the weeds.
yeah, they look good right now.
Yeah, I would, if I were you, I'd go outside.
Okay.
If I had not had to record my class for Rhett and one of my other students,
Yeah,
I would have been outside in a heartbeat.
yeah, I feel like it's always challenging because there's so many distractions outside. My only other is like the little kids, it's like, just try not to let them get distracted. But
It would be, honestly, I think with little kids, that would be really difficult to teach outside.
yeah, I know.
I mean, it's hard enough as an adult to stay focused.
Right, I know. So
Could be-
I'm still on the fence.
Yeah, I don't blame you at all.
Okay, I'm back for my children here, all the children.
Oh crap, I have to record this one too. Man,
Oh, because you have students missing.
yeah.
I had somebody missing from this class this morning, but I was.
Please pray for me. For meeting with them, with parents, I may not allow conversations. Here, just right now. Father, we thank you for opportunities. And Lord, just listen, serve,
Oh, come on. Oh, well, now I'll go back. I'll be sure.
Oh, and here's what I have for you. Oh, we're gonna do it from now. Keep moving them. Yeah. So look at these, this is what I figured out, total availability. Keep them, don't lose them, and then come back and put one over.
Lord help us, because what the heck is going to happen when things really get tough.
Yeah, I mean, well, and it's so hard, like, I don't know, how strict are you being on the mask thing, like, because I have some students yesterday by like 2:10 who, like, just came in, sat down with their mask, and it was like, I don't know who told them to do that, or if it just, like, socially, they had, like,
You know, I haven't had that happen yet. Oops, that's my fault.
I'm trying to
honestly,
but-
I haven't had that happen yet because by the afternoon I'm only doing City Hall.
Yeah.
Because here's my thing. What I think what I would do if it does happen to me, I would be like, oh, I understand. Masks can be overwhelming. They can start. Can you take a chair, use it as a desk, and pull yourself back?
Yeah, or if we need a break, we can, like, go to the bathroom. So,
Yeah.
like, the only thing that it's tough for me is that, like, I know we had a 4th grade student who pulled out at the last minute this last weekend because we wouldn't allow shields.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of feel like if we're not going to actually enforce it, then I feel really bad for that family. Who,
Right.
like, felt so strongly about their daughter not even, like we weren't going to allow shields and stuff like that. And
Right.
I've seen, like, 1 or 2 kids with shields. I'm hoping they have a medical
Mm-hmm.
reason to wear shields. So, but, like, I just feel bad for all the families who, like, pulled out if
Right.
if we're not really gonna, like, enforce it, if that makes sense. And that's maybe, like, the justice part of my personality that, like I want, yeah, I just wouldn't want them to, like, find out, oh, well, they're not even making it, they actually wear masks after everything
Right.
that happened, you know. And
I'm just,
I don't know.
as you ask that, I'm like, that's probably what I'd be like, oh, I understand. I get it. I get overwhelmed, because, oh my gosh.
I know, I just
It's
kind of
hard.
reminded
So-
you that, like, we were gonna do something
so
with
I think-
partners, and I was like, hey, guys, make sure you have your masks on, you're working with your partner, and stuff like that. But-
Yeah, and I've been trying to set the example too, like when I'm
Right.
up here, and I'm like, okay, but if I get close to him, I'll pull my mask. And one girl goes, it's okay. I'm like, actually, you know what? I need to honor your freedom.
Right.
I said, so I'm getting close to you, so I'm gonna put my mask on. I need to honor your freedom.
Yeah, totally.
So I think that's gonna help
Where
too.
is student government being held?
I don't know.
We gotta decide
Because
that.
there are like major arguments going on already. I was like, you guys, at least wait for lunch.
I'll look,
Gracious.
you know. I
Okay,
just have to look at it on my computer.
okay, do they have to pay for student government since it's a club?
They do, yes.
Oh,
But but we reduced, I should have told you this. Because originally it was like, I don't know how much it was. It was like a certain amount for the hour-long class. But then when we went to, like, having it over lunch hour
okay.
and having it just a half an hour, then,
It's like, I don't care if they pay for it. Do you need to get paid, Susan?
well, you guys are gonna get a little bit of.
Do you want to get paid for student?
I wanna get paid a little bit,
Okay,
yes.
yeah, that's
You're
fine.
not, let me tell you, you're not gonna get
Um,
paid very
yeah,
much. I think it's
actually-
like-
I do.
I can't remember what it is. It's either like, I think it's like 7